Hello, everybody. How are you doing? Hi, Chrissy. How are we all doing today? I have a very special guest who's hopping on right now and knows how to do this. So, joining me from the UK today. As you know, I'm stationed in Maryland, and we're going to talk a lot about religious trauma. Hi, Chrissy.
Hi,
How you doing?
how you doing?
Oh, it's good. It's nice and sunny here. A little bit hot. It's in the 90s, but still, it's nice out. How about you?
Yeah, same actually. The UK is actually warm. Can you
Oh,
believe it?
global warming. We'll go with
Right?
that, right?
I know, but no, it's actually really nice. Lovely day today, so can't complain too much.
So you've enjoyed your Sunday afternoon then?
Sorry, say that again?
You've enjoyed your Sunday afternoon?
Yeah, chilling in the garden. Yeah, it's been nice. Not something we often get to do over here, so
Now, when you say garden,
yeah.
what do you mean by garden?
It's a very different to what you guys have as gardens. Let's just put it out there.
Okay.
So we have probably smaller gardens than what you're used to. Certainly not massive, areas of land, but
Right.
trees, flowers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the outside,
I don't
right?
know how else to explain it. It's not massive, but it's somewhere you could just chill in. So it's all right.
That's
It's all
awesome.
right.
I want to thank you so much for joining me on this live. Uh, and I'm hoping that the people who follow me will get an opportunity to listen to your story and be encouraged by
Yeah.
uh, everything you've gone through. You know, you and I have had quite a few conversations, which has been lovely. And your story is very inspiring considering what you've come out of. So,
Thank
that case, would you take a moment and just kind of introduce yourself to everybody?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me on as well, Brad. You've been a great help to me since we've been talking, and certainly great to have a support system in place. So I need to say thank you to you too. So yeah, I'm Chrissy or Christiana, however people know me. Obviously from the UK. I am, I guess, what you could call a deconstructing ex-Christian, if you want to put it like that. Um, and I think, yeah, I mean, Brad certainly has been with me on this journey. So, yeah, that's kind of a very basic introduction.
Hey, yes. Yeah, it's interesting because all of us that have deconstructed have I don't want to say different labels, but we describe ourselves just slightly different throughout the deconstructing process, depending upon what religion or what we're coming out of.
Yeah.
So, in the case, take a moment if you don't mind, and tell us a little bit about your religious background.
Sure. So yeah, I was born and raised in a Christian family. I would say that it was a kind of combination between sort of evangelical Christianity and a bit of Pentecostalism as well, thrown in there for good measure. Uh, Pastor's kid. So my dad was a pastor for pretty much um, most of sort of my kind of sort of from about I think about 11 years old right through to like me being like later on in my teens. Um, there was always people in the house. I grew up very much having a home full of people coming in and out. My parents were counselors, very much part of the community. Um, and yeah, I think I was kind of forced to go to church up until the age of 16 when I was allowed to finally make my own decisions. But by that point, I'd already been massively involved in seeing and understanding my parents' beliefs. Both of my parents had quite an extreme conversion to Christianity, especially my dad. He had quite a big conversion experience, which then led him to obviously have a heart and a passion for other people. Had come from similar backgrounds, So yeah, I guess I was kind of yeah, I was in that environment for a number of obviously a number of years. I grew up in it, and my dad was very strict, being that he was like meant to be a man of God, um, holy art thou. That also meant that the family had to be, you know, to follow suit. So
Right.
there was a lot of pressure on me as a child to be, I guess, you know, the pastor's child needs to follow suit, and you know, you need to kind of not be perfect, but I guess there's that expectation that the family needs to lead by example. So there
Right.
was pressure. As a teenager, you know, I couldn't wear makeup, I couldn't do certain things, couldn't have boyfriends, couldn't have posters on my wall, for example, of like my favorite band. Back in the day, New Kids on the Block were my my idols. Now I'm showing my age. No, honestly, you know, I love them. I love them, but I wasn't allowed to have them on my wall. I could listen to secular music. They weren't too bad about that, but I do remember specifically having like a couple of posters and my dad coming in the room and going mad and ripping them down and saying, "How dare you have idols on your wall?" It was just very strict. And he was, you know, back then, I don't know whether there was like some sort of movement that meant that pastors needed to be 100% straight down the line.
Yeah.
Either way, it affected me, it affected my relationship with my parents, from a very young age.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So growing up in that environment, it sounds very hard line, the belief system, whatever have you. Um, and in the UK, if I understand it correctly,
Yeah.
everything I've read from the American standpoint, okay, let me just clarify that.
Yeah.
Like the Southern Baptists consider the UK an unreached people group,
Yeah.
a secular, overly secular nation. Were you ever looked at oddly, or living in that kind of environment? I mean, how did where were your friendships formed? Were they formed in church, outside of church? How did you manage all that?
Good question. I guess when I was in sort of a teenager at school, I was like the only one that kind of had this lifestyle. And, you know, there was always prayer meetings in my house, worship, worship music, you know, people with guitars, very kind of kumbaya sort of moments, Bible studies. My dad was very big on leading Bible studies, so there was always Bible studies in the home. And I was very conscious that people could see into the house and be like, what's this group of people doing in the front room? It looked a bit weird. It was a bit weird, if I'm being honest. But, you know, yeah, I think I found it hard. I think I definitely found it hard to talk about. I think, you know, how do you even explain to your friends that, yeah, by the way, my mum and dad are pastors, you know, they have people in the house and they talk to people, they do Bible studies, they believe in God, like, you know, very big belief system. So most of my friends were just, like you said, school, you know, growing up. And then in my later years, I would say in like my later 20s, I had a big group of friends that were from the church that I was going to for a number of years. But yeah, it was hard to navigate. I think I just did what most kids did and just tried to kind of live as much of a normal life, I guess, within the boundaries that my parents would allow me to live without being, you know, sinful.
Yeah. So you went through this, obviously, your childhood on up. When
Yeah.
did you start to deconstruct your religious beliefs?
Ooh. Okay. So this is kind of like twofold. I just want to sort of caveat by saying this is my sort of personal story. Like this, I know there's a lot of people that are still in this system. I've got family, I've got friends that are still very much in the Christian circles, still going to churches, and they still have a really strong faith. And, you know, I would never take that away from them. But this is my experience of what indoctrination and spiritual trauma, religious abuse, and this is what happened to me personally, and the effects of fundamentalism. So it is a, you know, this is just my own, this is what happened to me, is what I'm
Sure.
trying to say.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess that the first part of it was I was going to a church for a number of years, and the church had an Armenian doctrine, if you know what that is. It was very much about what you had to do to be right with God. You had to tick certain boxes. You had to be, it was all, the pressure was on you, basically. It wasn't about love. It wasn't about the grace. It wasn't about God being for you. It may have started like that, but certainly as time went on, it was very much about what you had to do. And if you kind of didn't, you know, follow suit, then, you know, you're kind of damned to hell, or, you know, you had to follow a certain way or believe a certain way, which kind of created a myriad of problems, because through those lenses, I was then only able to view the world through the way I was being taught. So through the Bible being quite literal, by the way, there was never, I was taught that the Bible was 100%, you know, error. There was no errors in it. It was the word of God. And I fully believe that, by the way. I did fully believe that, until so during the time I was at the church, as I say, I started to feel the effects of being taught a certain doctrine, which was, you know, there wasn't any security. There was fear of losing your salvation if you didn't do certain things. Did you have enough faith? Were you chosen? Were you elect? Were you this? Were you that? There was just so many ifs, buts, and maybes. You were never fully loved unconditionally by God. It was like, oh yeah, he loves you, but then there's like a whole loads of caveats, what you had to do to be right and receive this love, right? So that was a big problem for me, because as the years went on, I began to feel the pressure of trying to be someone who I simply wasn't. But I didn't know who I was, because all I'd known was the biblical teaching of how I should be. And that's kind of how I grew up, the decisions I made as a, you know, as an adult. Everything I did was influenced by God and the Bible and what he said I should do.
Right.
So there began to become flaws with the way I was feeling about what I was being taught, because it was starting to damage me. And I didn't know at the time what it was, but I knew that there was something really wrong, and my mental health started suffering. So that was one element of it. The second element of it was my mum. So my mum, 4 years ago, well, actually it was longer, she passed away 4 years ago, but leading up to her death, she had very severe depression. My mum was a God-fearing, Bible-believing woman, really believed in the relationship that she had with Jesus, very much, you know, used to see pictures and get visions for people, very, very spiritual. You know, my mum was very into the whole supernatural side of things, but she had a really strong faith. And when she got this depression, and I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was to the point where she tried to take her own life. And then as a result, ended up in hospital with a myriad of health issues because she hadn't been looking after herself very well. But the suffering that she went through, and as the child witnessing your parent suffer, smashing their heads against the wall saying, help me, help me, help me, and there's nothing you can do, I started to question, where are the promises of God? When do they actually start to play out? Like, here is a real life situation with someone suffering beyond measure, not just my mum, but others, the family, you know, people around her, my dad, you know, my sister, all of us were literally at our wits' end. We did not know what to do, who to turn to for help. She'd been to the doctors, she'd seen psychiatrists, she'd gone to the church, she'd had prayer, she'd had flipping oil poured over her, she had, you name it, she had it, but nothing was working. So it got to the point where, you know, people would say, oh, you've just got to hold on to the promises of God, you've got to believe, you know, you've got to name it and claim it, as they say. And it got to the point where the promises of God did nothing for me. And by the end, by the time I'd watched my mum die, and I watched my mum die, I don't think I could ever, I could never get my head around the fact that there was not, that he wasn't there. Like, there wasn't, I never felt the peace of God that transcends all understanding. I never felt his presence in that moment. I never felt just a myriad of things, strength, whatever you want to call it. However those promises play out, for me, there had to be a reality to it. There's words in a book that I can read, but I need reality. If you want me to believe it, then give me something real and that's tangible that I can hold on to, especially in the darkest times of someone's life. My mum didn't see that. I didn't see that. And I think that was a massive thing for me. Then I began to think, well, if the promises of God in the Bible are not meant for us, are not meant for us to actually fully believe and use, which is what everyone in the Christian world does. It's the only thing we have to hope for, right? So that's what people believe. But if that doesn't work, and that's not for us, then what are we meant to believe? And then what parts of the Bible are we meant to believe and hold on to as truth? And what do we let go? And then it kind of opened up a myriad of problems off the back of those questions.
Yeah. So basically, you're going through all of this, okay, and you're deconstructing, and as we call it today, and you're analyzing everything that you've been taught since a kid.
Yeah.
Okay. How did your family and friends react to your deconstruction process?
They didn't really know.
Okay.
So I stopped going to church. I stopped. I mean, one of the things that, again, made me realize that I had to listen to my body was that I would go to a church service, and I didn't know it then, but my nervous system would kick in and I would be paralyzed with fear, like full on anxiety. I couldn't breathe. I was petrified about what I was going to hear from the sermon. Was it a sermon that was going to make me feel safe, or was it a sermon that was going to make me feel afraid? And the majority of my life, all I'd known was fear. Fear, 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 fear. No security, no stability in God, nothing. Just be scared. So, you know, I'd come out of church and I'd be shaking, like physically shaking. And it got to a point where I thought, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't live like that. It's not normal. So, but at the time, as I say, I didn't know about trauma. I didn't know about any of this. It was very new. You're talking many years ago, right? When I stopped going to church. So not many people knew. People knew I'd stopped going, but I don't think people really knew where I was at. And I still don't think people really know where I'm at, because it's not really a conversation that people don't ask me. It's just the kind of, oh, you know, we don't really talk about it. I guess my sister knows. My sister's got, runs a church with her husband in San Diego. She kind of knows I'm deconstructing, but I think she's aware of the word, and she's aware of the, I guess, what we can call movement. Over here in the UK, I'm not so sure that many people know about deconstruction. It's definitely not a thing that I've experienced. All of the accounts I follow, the podcasts I listen to, the Bart Ehrmans of the world, all these different amazing people that are talking out are American. They're not from the UK. So, you know, I just don't think that there's a massive thing. So I guess, you know, if someone was to question me, I'd have a very honest conversation. But I just think people are just, oh, she's left church, no big deal. But I don't think anyone really knows where I'm at.
You know, that's funny because my next question on our list is believe spiritually at this point or don't believe. Where do you fall?
Good question.
And I by saying at this point, because things change as we go through life, right? So we're always growing, we're always seeking. And so when I ask that question, it's not the hard, fast, this is where you're going to be forever, but where you're at this point.
Good question. So I think I am now at a place where I don't believe the Bible is fully God's word. I do believe it contains many errors. There's things in it now that I've seen that I never saw before. Certainly how it came to be, and I know there was a lot of conversations around that throughout my childhood, you know, oh, you know, how did it come to be? And but actually when you look at the evidence and you look at history and you look at science, there's just a myriad of things that you could pick apart if you wanted to, right? So I'm not where I once was. I do think that there are errors. I don't believe it is fully God's word. I think that in terms of how I live my life now, I don't even think about what I once held dear. I just live, if that makes sense. I live and I make my own decisions, and I function in my own self, in my own self-belief, and my own understanding, and my how I, you know, I don't let other influences or other ideologies influence my life now. Whereas before that was all I was able to do. Now I'm just like, if it doesn't work for me, I ain't hanging around to wait to see if God's going to show me that this is the way to go. I'm just out of there, or you know, I'll take a different direction. So I think in that respect I've changed, and I don't. I mean, you could go to the granular. Well, do you believe in Jesus? Do you believe in God at all? The truth is, I don't know anymore. I'd like to believe that, you know, there is a deity looking out for us, that loves us, that wants the best for us, and that one day will make everything bad go away. Realistically, is that going to happen? Probably not. Realistically, has that played out in my life and many other people's lives that say they're Christians? Probably not. So I don't know. I feel like I'm not seeking an experience anymore. Like, I think I used to be like, oh God, like if you're real, I really just let me hear something, feel something. And then you can almost like conjure up so many things yourself, right? Because you're in that moment, you so really want to connect.
Right.
And I've done that for so many years and over the years, and I'm like, it never gets me anywhere apart from disappointment. So all that to say, I wouldn't say I'm an atheist. I'm not fully atheist, but I'm certainly agnostic, and I'm certainly now very much on the fence. I would say I lean more towards atheism, just with how my journey is leaning. But I think I need to find that road for myself, because my entire life I've been taught what to believe and how to believe it. And now I'm like, actually, I'm my own person, and I get to choose what makes me feel safe. And if I hear something that does not make me feel safe, or re-traumatizes me or triggers me, then I want nothing to do with it. And if that means that that's God, then that's God. I would rather walk away from all of those beliefs and be happy and healthy mentally than be stuck in it, having some weird belief system but be massively damaged mentally. That's just how I feel.
That's awesome. So obviously, because of our conversations, you know, I've known this, and you, the wonderful thing about you is you share. You're like an open book, right? So you mentioned the struggles of coming out of religion. And when we're talking about religious trauma, obviously that's a real thing, but it's fairly new, when it comes to counseling and stuff like that. I imagine even more so potentially in the UK, unlike America. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So what did you do to, heal personally, to grab your life back? What kind of steps did you take?
Yeah, so I started obviously like looking for resources once I understood that there were people that were going through similar things to me, and that there were people talking out about how they'd been affected, especially people that had been raised in it like myself, but also that had had some, really similar experiences, like John Steingard, for example, Phil Drysdale, a few of the names that we know and love. When I'm listening to their stories, I'm like, wow, that's me. I remember seeing that. I remember experiencing that. So I started listening to people that had gone down this road and maybe were quite a lot further ahead, but just their stories. I wanted to hear people talk out and how they were affected, and what then made them decide to deconstruct, or how far down the line did they go. So started listening to people, podcasts, and then obviously I dug a little deeper. I started listening to Bart Ehrman, and I think he's absolutely brilliant. Just how he, being an ex-Christian himself, like suddenly understanding it, but from such an intellectual level. Then obviously listening to some scientific podcasts and things like that. And then just generally just trying to give myself as much information as I can, but not to the point where you are, because you can tend to lean the other way completely. Like if you hear all the negative stuff, then suddenly you're like way on the negative, and then you're kind of like, you're not really balancing it out. So I try to kind of listen to a healthy balance, I guess. But more so at the moment, because I know all the counter arguments, I'm not really interested in hearing the Christian side of the counter argument, because I know all of them. You know what I mean? I I was the person that would give you the arguments. So I want to go on the other side, where I want to hear things I've never heard before, and certainly have my eyes and ears open to things that I wasn't necessarily allowed to believe or hear. Even things like as simple as creation versus evolution, right? So we might think, well, come on, that's so obvious, and again, you'll have two sides of the fence. But I was very much a creationist, for many different reasons, but now I'm kind of like, well, let me hear another side. Let me understand things, not just from a basic level, but let me actually understand things. No point in me saying I believe things if I'm just ignorant and I'm not even educating myself. Like, you have to really, if you really want to understand things, there's so many resources out there that can give you so many different perspectives. It can be confusing. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You could get to a point when you're like, bloody hell, I don't know where I'm at now. It's just confused me even more. and that could happen, right? That could happen. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I don't let it get to me like that anymore. If I get to a stumbling block, I'll just let it pass, or I'll talk about it with you, or, share it and just kind of move on until either the idea leaves me alone, stops bugging me, or I find like peace with it in whatever way I decide to go. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. Oh my. So BG girl just chimed in, and it's Kelly, and she goes, I love the bloody hell, or whatever have you. So us Americans are showing our Americanese, if you will, with language, right? So awesome. I do it every time you say it. So okay, so let me ask another question on the healing projection. What has been your biggest struggle in continuing to heal? Like, is there something that keeps coming up, or something that it's hard to let go of, or to not impact your life?
Yeah, there is. So I'm just reading the comments. Get bored of my accent after a while. Yeah, I that's a good question. There are different, yeah. I mean, as I said, the one of the biggest things is obviously that I still have family and friends that are part of it, so that can be quite difficult, and can be quite re-triggering. I think for me, one of the biggest things that I found hard was people's experiences, like individual experiences. Well, this happened to me, and I had this supernatural experience with God, or I heard him, or I felt him, or I've yeah, I mean, actual real life examples of where someone has said that they've actually experienced God, versus me that what I may have thought was God, I now may put it down to something else.
Right.
Now I've had a bit more, I guess, education, and understanding how the brain works, the neurons in your brain, the pathways in your brain, all of the. I never knew. There's so much stuff I didn't know when it comes to the brain. It just blows my mind every time I listen to something. So I think there's a lot of that comes into play. So when I hear people talk about that can be a bit difficult for me, because then I'm like, am I wrong? Am I wrong? Am I wrong because these other people have had these amazing experiences, and could I? And it causes you to doubt, I guess. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one thing that's been quite hard. But then I still kind of come back to the fact that even if that's the case, even if someone has had, what they claim to be like, an actual experience, that's great. Like if it has helped you and is taking you in a direction that's positive and happy and healthy, then, I'm all for it. I think that's amazing. Good for you. But for me personally, it's not happened. And I've had many situations throughout my life where I have been desperate to hear or be comforted by something from God, whether it be a word, whether it be his voice, whether it be something tangible, and I have never experienced it. So how can I just have my own belief system based on someone else's experience? Like, I can't. That doesn't work for me anymore. It used to give me hope. I used to think, oh my God, that's amazing, look what happened to that person. And it would spur you on, give you that little bit of faith that you might have lacked. But now I'm just kind of like, that's not enough for me anymore. Like, I need more. So yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. Sure. When it comes to like doctrine arguments, pick apart the Bible, right? That's one of the main things that caused me as well to deconstruct, was the fact that there's so many different versions of it. Arminianism, Calvinism, like, where do you even begin? Who's right? Who's wrong? Who are you going to believe? That pastor over there. They all talk from the same book, but they all have different messages, and they all take from it what they believe. So from my perspective, I've sat under many pastors over the years, and as a result, I have been damaged. I've been traumatized by what they've taught. So for me personally, I think that I guess you just have to come to a point where you think, am I going to sit and listen to people try and tell me what they believe to be true, or why I'm wrong in what I think? Or am I going to really see how it's affected me as a person? And, and at the end of the day, I can only do that. I can only go by what's happened to me and the experiences I've had. And, ultimately, if people want to argue with me about why the Bible's true or why God is real, you'll just waste your breath. Because ultimately, I want to believe what you believe. I'd love to believe that he's there, but I just don't see enough evidence for it anymore. That's
all right. That's a great answer. Hey, you're speaking your truth, right? So it's all good. So let me ask you kind of a fun question. And what advice would you give to someone going through deconstruction? Like, what's something that you would think would be useful for them to know?
Oh, wow. Okay. So again, I think if something causes you harm,
Mm-hmm.
if you come away from something feeling unsure, afraid, scared, insecure, confused, unloved, not worthy, so many to shame, all of those things, walk away.
Hmm.
Like, just walk away, because over time that will build. That will build, and that will have an impact on you at some point, because there's only so much you can take. You can absorb that into your subconscious without it coming out. It will play out in some way, shape, or form, and you may not even realize it, but it will play out in your relationships. It could play out in your marriages. It could play out in so many different ways, even just how you function on a day-to-day with work, with people. So I would say, yeah, if you're somewhere where you're unsure, I think you can't be afraid to walk away. I think you have to get to a place where you want to be free, and you want to be free and to think and feel for you, and also to just enjoy your life. Like, figure out what you like that was such a big thing for me. Like, I came out and I was like, what do I even like? I you know I was married for a number of years, and I was tied into quite an oppressive marriage for a number of years, and then I came out of that, and I was just like, God. And even that was a Christian marriage that was surrounded by a whole load of other problems. So coming out of that, like, what do I look, what kind of a person would I want to be with? Like, what's important to me, not what's important to God. Like, all of the thou shalt submit to your husband, thou shalt obey, all of this. No, 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 no. Hold on, let's just go back to basics. So what is important to me as a person, right? So what do I like, what don't I like, what just figuring out about yourself, because I pretty much guarantee you there's an element of you that you probably don't even know exists, because I certainly know, as I'm coming out of this and I'm maturing, I hope, and like just living and having different experiences that I would never have had as a Christian. I think I've certainly really learned a lot about myself, things I never knew about myself. And I think that just comes with different experiences, but you're not going to get that if you're stuck in one environment with one set of lenses, that you are having to be someone you're not, because that pressure is there for you to live a certain way and be a certain way, because you can't live. There's always another another thing you have to do, like someone you have to convert. There's a project you have to, you see them as a project. You can't just love someone for who they are, because you got to get them saved. So I think, yeah, and for me that just wasn't, that isn't love, right? That isn't just being fully you and accepting people for who they are. You do judge as a Christian. I don't believe anyone that says that they don't, because that's crap. You absolutely do judge as a Christian. I don't have those weights on me anymore. I'm very free from all of that. And I think when you walk away from it, you just can breathe. I think that's the easiest way. I can breathe, and I haven't got, oh, have I sinned today? Have I disappointed God today? Am I safe today? Am I in today, or am I out tomorrow? Like, I haven't got all of that weight on me that I used to have. Like, I'm just free from it. So yeah, just be you. Walk away. Doesn't matter. If you offend people, you offend people. Who gives a shit? Like, life's too short. Like, sorry, it is. Do you know what I mean? Just walk away. You got to do what's best for you. At the end of the day, that's the most important thing, is you're the one that's living this. You're in your body day in, day out. And if something is traumatizing you, making you fearful, or whatever other things that it could be doing. You've got to just evaluate, do I want this? You know, and for me, like in my 40s, I'm like, I am done. Like, I don't want to be in pain anymore. I don't want that confusion, and I don't want that uncertainty in my life. So yeah.
Okay, awesome. Listen, that's great. That's great. I love when you get. So that being that, let me ask you, how is the best way, or what's the best way for people to follow your journey?
Well, I don't really have an Instagram account like you, Brad.
Well, no, no, you have a good Instagram account. Come on now.
Well, I mean, like, you know, you're you're doing all of this, and you know, you got a platform. I don't have. I'm just a normal bod, right? I'm a normal bod. Sorry.
People relate to normal people, right? So that's okay. Yeah.
True. Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm on Instagram. People are welcome to message me, reach out to me. I mean, look, the reason I agreed to do this was because I don't think that there's enough people talking out about religious trauma and spiritual abuse in the UK. As we've already touched on, in America, it's massive, a big movement, lots of people talking about it now. In the UK, certainly not a thing that I've come across. And if my story helps one person, then for me, that's, you know, that's great, because I think when you're in that place and you're really afraid to know what to feel, know what to believe, and there's, you know, there's so many other factors, especially if you're, you know, maybe married to someone that's still a Christian, or, you know, you've got a family, you're scared to tell your family or whatever. There's so many different things. So look, you know, if I can help anyone, you know, I'm more than happy to talk to people. So yeah.
Well, I've got to tell you, Chrissy, I always come out feeling refreshed when I talk to you.
Good.
Because you're right, it's a different perspective in the UK as well, and I love how real and open you are. You wear your feelings on your sleeve, basically. I mean, you tell exactly what's on your mind, and that takes a lot of courage and bravery to do that, especially growing up how you grew up, and the environment you grew up, and then being willing to say, hey, for anybody in the UK, I get what you're going through. Although it's not talked about like it is in America, I get what you're talking about or what you're going through right now. And so I'm really appreciative of you for taking this opportunity to join me. I'm thankful that you came on here. You know, I adore you. So, I mean,
Thanks.
I love the direction you're going as well. And so I just want to personally thank you for taking the time to come on here and to share your voice and to share your story and allow me to hold space for you to be able to talk about your journey. It's an honor to be able to do that. And so I'm hoping that everybody that's watched this and everybody that will watch this will also gain that courage, find that freedom that you found, and know that they're not alone in the UK. Well, so thank you for being here today. I appreciate so I'm sure we'll talk again very soon. But by the way, are your DMs open if people have questions?
I think so. You mean message?
Meaning, are they allowed to DM you or direct message you if they have questions?
I'll open it. I don't know how, but I'll figure it out. But yeah, it'll be fine.
Yeah, you'll see it. It'll pop up at the top of your screen that somebody's commented to you. So just in case anybody in the UK had questions or wanted to talk to you about what you've shared,
Yeah.
I always clarify if they're open or not, or if they're closed. So if you say they're allowed to, then they're open.
Yeah.
Go with that. So so if you have any questions for her, please, by all means, reach out to her. What is this? French said, hey, son, Chrissy.
Yeah, French is a friend of mine. Back together.
All right. Awesome. She did, didn't she, French? I mean, just did amazing. So you were fabulous today. Thank you. And for all those who joined us, thank you as well. And we hope to see you again next time. So
yeah, great. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thank you, Chrissy. All right.
Bye, guys. Bye.